Okay, which one? We're live for another coronavirus journal. Why do we do this, Patrick?
I don't know. How long do you think it's going to go? Do you think we're going to be doing this 2022?
I think maybe I only put one video in this. It looked like you had a ton.
I just started going, and next thing I knew, I started writing notes for prep of the next one, because I'm like, I don't know when the next one is. And I started reading my notes. I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff that's happened. And it kind of led me down a rabbit hole, and as you saw from the featured image.
I don't even know what the title or featured image means.
Ivermectin cures Havana syndrome in Taliban refugees. It's like every viral story in the last week.
All combined into one.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was I only have one video, and I think it's the second one we'll show. And after listening to this doctor, I'm like, man, this is going to be years.
Years?
Yeah, that's what this guy sounds like. He's like 90% vaccination among a population will not be enough to protect us from Delta.
That doesn't even make sense to me. Like, is our vaccination just not effective enough? Because the vaccinations are saying, like, wasn't it like when we got our vaccine, we got the Johnson & Johnson, but the Pfizer and Moderna were like 95% effective at preventing
hospitalization.
I think from preventing mild cases or moderate cases, but 100% effective at preventing. Yeah. So if it's 90 or 95% effective at preventing moderate to severe symptoms, what else is left? Do we need a vaccine that's 100% effective? I think that wouldn't even work. Because 100% effective would still allow for, the way they write it, it would still allow for mild cases.
Yeah.
And if it's mild cases, shouldn't we just get on with our lives?
It's just not mild cases. That's the problem. And so I've got some numbers pulled up here, but maybe we should just go ahead and get to the videos. We'll start with your state of COVID video here.
The CDC estimates that the highly contagious Delta variant now accounts for over 90% of new COVID-19 cases here in the U.S. as ICU beds across the country once again filling up.
Let's bring in the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Michael Osterholm. Dr. Osterholm, thanks for being with us. You have said that COVID-19, quote, seems to want to run sprints and not marathons. That said, what do you think the next few weeks, the next few months are going to look like for us in this country?
Well, unfortunately, it's not clear. If we look at the patterns of how Delta has emerged around the rest of the world, we see these very rapid bursts in cases, this big surge like we're seeing in the United States right now, and then a rather rapid descent in cases, meaning that they drop precipitously, but they never go back to baseline. A good example is the United Kingdom. They started out at 1,000 cases a day reported. During the peak, they got to 47,000 cases a day, and then the number dropped rapidly, but it hit 26,000 and leveled off there, and today it's at 32,000. So we're not quite sure what it's going to do in this country. The states that have been hit the hardest, and the ones that are probably really at their peak about right now, only make up 12% of the U.S. population. And so the other 88% of the population are still really a too early to call kind of situation, where we're seeing in the Northwest, we're seeing in the Southeast, we're seeing in the upper Midwest, also beginning of these rises in cases. Question will be, how high will they go? So, for the next 6 to 8 weeks, this is going to be a stay-tuned moment.
And Dr. Osterholm, on the heels of this news we're getting today about the J&J shot and possibly an extra shot, you actually take issue with the word booster. Explain why we're getting that language wrong in your opinion.
Well, a booster infers that I at one time had full protection from the virus and kind here with the vaccine. But when you think about childhood vaccines, for example, some of them we actually give 3 or 4 doses before we actually get to the basic level of protection. And so what we have to distinguish here is for the immune compromised, for example, where they never did accomplish getting to that level of protection with their first 2 doses. So giving them a 3rd dose is not really a booster. It's what I call part of the prime series. Now, for those that did get adequate immune protection at one point, then it wanes. That then becomes a booster kind of idea, meaning that, okay, you did get protection, but it's starting to not look so good, let's boost it up. And I think distinguishing those are important because we don't want to use boosters if we don't have to prevent serious illness and hospitalizations. We need the vaccines around the world. But if we need them for a prime series to say you got to have 3 doses before you're protected, then I think that's a very different situation.
The reason why that is really stupid is because we aren't doing any antibody tests to know if somebody needs a
booster?
third shot or not. What's he
That's an
even talking
interesting-
about?
Yeah, well, when I listen to that, I think, one, what's going on with the dialogue of people who have had COVID? Because aren't there a lot of people who aren't getting the vaccine because they've had COVID? There's a lot of people who don't want to get the vaccine.
Sure.
And one legitimate reason could be, I already had COVID. And the question that I've had for this whole last year is, what happens if you've had COVID? Does our natural immunity mean nothing? Do we know? Can we see? Because this whole idea that we have to have antibodies in our blood all the time, like, shouldn't our immune system with the helper T and B cells be able to produce an antibody on the onslaught of the new virus coming?
And I read some headline that said natural immunity is better for Delta than the vaccine, but who the hell knows? Nobody's doing these tests.
So what you're suggesting, though, is we should be taking a test to see, like, have we lost our antibodies?
Yes.
I wanted to do that test right around the time I got COVID, because I'm autoimmune compromised, and I wanted to see if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that I got ever did produce antibodies in the first place, because I could not have any antibodies right now.
That's true.
And I don't know, but no one's talking about doing those tests. Like, I don't even hear that mentioned anywhere. Like, the forums, the news.
I only
wouldn't that be a
listen to one
test?
podcast where this one doctor, he's doing it, and he's keeping up with his own numbers, immunity numbers and stuff. And he was saying he did not need a vaccine, but he wanted to travel, and the country he was traveling to forced him to get a vaccine, and he had a huge adverse reaction to the vaccine.
And is that because he thinks he had antibodies already?
Yes. And I was just playing pickleball with somebody who somewhat recently had COVID, and he told me he recently got vaccinated, and he said the vaccine really killed him. And he was super sick from COVID.
Well, and we're going to get into mask mandates and all this crazy stuff that's going on, but another thing that I've been thinking about at the very beginning of all this, back when we first got our first COVID tests, remember those days when you went to a doctor and you're like, man, I hoped I was negative. Maybe you were like, I hope I'm positive.
No,
I'm already over it.
I didn't want to be positive. I wanted to have antibodies from in January when I was super sick.
Well, the thought that I had back then that still kind of holds true today is, if you've been vaccinated, shouldn't we be going out and not wearing masks and kind of exposing ourselves to a little bit more? I mean, you can't decide how much you're being exposed to, but if you had COVID and you got over it, or you've had the vaccine and have antibodies, wouldn't it make biological sense that maybe I should go to the bar a couple times a month hardcore and hope that, like, I get exposed to a little bit of the virus that my body can then overtake because I have the antibodies, and that would be like a natural booster? But instead, from a lot of the content I got for tonight's show, it sure feels like we're saying even the vaccinated need to be masked, double masked. Outside, you need to be masked. Here in Puerto Rico, when you're driving your car alone, you got to be masked. And I'm like, does this make any sense in the traditional sense of what vaccines should be doing and what your natural immunity should be doing? I kind of feel like maybe I should get a little COVID now while my body can survive it and not find myself in a position where my antibodies have been depleted.
I think the argument is that now we're potentially spreading the Delta variant, whereas the original COVID-19 vaccinated people weren't spreading nearly as much. I think that's the argument.
Gosh, I just wish I knew the real science back then.
It's
When
so
you had
frustrating.
COVID and you got over COVID, do we know for certain a year ago that you could not also spread COVID again?
Who the hell?
Because that's what they're
knows, man?
saying now. They're saying you're vaccinated, but you could still catch it and spread it as a vaccinated person.
Yeah.
Maybe we've been spreading this a little bit all along. It's kind of like you remember when we said that you could get the virus from touching things and we have to wipe everything down. And now it feels like that narrative, even with Delta, which is 10 times more contagious, it's like, no, all that was kind of garbage. It's just the aerosol. It's the face mask and the breathing and the sneezing.
I have now heard 2 doctors, in the next video I'll show you, and I think that video that you just showed, I think soon after that, I watched that video too, he starts talking about the need for moving to real N95 masks.
Okay.
And he's like, the fabric masks, do almost nothing.
I have videos on that.
And it's good if it's the only option. But now that we have plenty of N95 masks around the world, everyone should be wearing those everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're taking steps backwards now.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's watch this second video here.
Hang on, am I hearing you right? You're saying that even if we get to 90% of vaccination, which most people is saying is unrealistic, that no country will ever really get to 90%, we will still need to wear masks and we'll still need sort of restrictive, almost semi-lockdown measures. Is that what you're saying to beat Delta?
I'm not saying that we need hard lockdowns. No one wants lockdowns, but without these other measures, you cannot just simply hope that if you reopen, but you don't have premium masks, you don't have ventilation standards, ban on indoor dining, vaccine passport systems. If you don't have these in place, I guarantee you, you will be headed towards a lockdown because the cases will be surging so quickly and the hospital beds will be filling up. Without these other measures, you're headed for disaster.
Because Australians are being told that once we get to 80% vaccination, we will start to be able to treat coronavirus like the flu.
I hope so, but I'm worried because we're seeing surges in Iceland with 75% fully vaccinated, 90-some% over the age of 16 that is partially vaccinated. That is really worrisome because those countries like that and Israel, they are some of the most highly vaccinated countries in the world, and they did not stop the Delta variant. It's probably the most contagious virus we'll see in our lifetime.
Is it the case that you are seeing hospital?
So that guy doesn't have very good news.
He also didn't have very good lighting for his live
or
appearance.
audio. That's true.
He's like, I'm finally on TV, and I'm just going to let the, was it the laptop?
Maybe
up
so,
lighting?
yeah.
The previous video, the first video, there was something else that caught my attention. And that was, he was saying that COVID never drops down below the first initial wave that we had. He said something about when this all started, I think he was talking about the UK, it was at 1,000 cases per day. And then it went up to 100,000 cases per day. But now it's leveled back down to like 20,000 cases per day. And I was just thinking, well, at the beginning of this pandemic, we weren't even testing.
Right, you couldn't find tests.
How could you make it, like, how can a guy who is, supposed to be one of the greatest minds on this whole pandemic not acknowledge that back in January, February, or March, April, May of last year, we weren't testing at all. And the numbers probably could have been way higher than the base level that it's dropped at now. I
know. It just seems like so many of these people are just kind of making stuff up all the time. It's very frustrating. The other interesting thing, that video was from an Australian news channel, and I've been watching stuff on Australia, and the situation on Australia and New Zealand is pretty interesting because they did such a good job of locking down early. I think I actually have their numbers pulled up.
They did such a good job of like locking and suppressing down their entire population.
Yes.
That
there were barely any cases or deaths. So now, look at this. I mean, this is the daily cases. I mean, this is so few. 700 cases were the max they ever had a day.
And
That's
insane. And now they're freaking out about
1,000
cases a day.
Yeah, which is still so low. I mean, look at these death numbers. Like,
which
9.
The first guy was saying, we've originally only had 1,000 cases a day, the beginning of all this, in the UK, I think is what he's talking about. And now we're at 20,000. Australia, a country that does it have more people than the UK? But a whole continent.
I have no idea.
Has only now gotten to 1,000 cases per day.
But the interesting thing about Australia is they did such a good job of muffling this down. We actually have some writers who are in Australia, and they said, I remember I was talking with one of them, and she said something like, we currently have 2 coronavirus cases here. And I was like, in your
dorm,
town, or neighborhood, or house?
In your house?
And she was like, no, my whole country. Something like that. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, we have 2 cases like across the street at my neighbor's house. So they did such a good job of squelching this that now nobody wants to take the vaccine over there because they're like, it's not a big deal. They they probably have never even heard of a single person who's gotten the virus,
Right, but is the vaccination, like, I wish, does Worldometers now have a vaccine tab? Like, that would be interesting to know if places like New Zealand and Australia that have completely avoided the pandemic for the most part. You would think that's where it would be the biggest vaccine deniers, you know, or resistors.
Yeah.
Is a place where you're like, well, we've gone through this whole pandemic and no one I know has gotten the virus.
Yeah.
Why would I would probably feel that way, right? Like,
Sure.
why, unless I need to travel and go somewhere else, why would I even begin to take the risk if no one in my town has even caught it?
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of a strange situation there.
One thing I want to talk about, I don't know where I have videos of this, but I had it in my notes. I don't think there's a video about this at all, but I have been looking at India because, I don't know if I said this on the last episode, but the Delta variant is the Indian variant.
Which is funny because everybody likes in the news says that the Delta variant, they at least hint that it comes from all the anti-vaxxers in America, right? Like
oh yeah, if you didn't get the
reason why.
vaccine, then you're the reason that something like this exists.
Yes.
But if you look up what the Delta variant is, and you look at the number that, you know, the number dignifies like the mutations in a certain gene, and you look up that number of what Delta is, it's the same strain that was in India. And if you pull up India, India had this crazy thing in May, right? This is back, you look at this, May was when we thought, oh my gosh, India might beat the United States. India might be hit the absolute hardest. And India certainly looks bad, but you have to remember that India has 1 billion people in their country. And I believe we did talk about this because I remember if you sort by deaths per million population, India drops from being the 5th largest number of total cases to like 120th.
Yeah, so the United States has 1,900 deaths per 1 million population, and India just has 300.
And so the narrative I've built in my mind, and I would love to be wrong. I wish there was somebody to debate me, and like I'll throw it to you so that you can kind of see this, and we obviously have viewers. But if you go back to the India and you look at the deaths during that insane breakout of the Delta variant, and then go back to the United States, like open up the United States COVID numbers, it sure looks like Delta is not that deadly. Yet the media makes it out to be like this is the absolute worst thing.
So this
ever.
is the cases. You can see we're kind of on the way. Like we've surpassed
plateaued.
now all three of the 4 waves.
But if you hit 7-day, I think it's like kind of plateaued.
The thing is that some of the states, I know Florida for a fact, is going back in time now and adding deaths to like a week previous, and it's messing with their charts a lot. So
let's look at the deaths though. So the deaths are nowhere near where the deaths were during the middle wave. And they're lagging. I know you'd have to draw this chart out to where your mouse is.
But remember, dude, this was like peak fear back here, and we are back up to that level.
Okay, but look at the first wave of deaths, right?
Here.
Look where that is. Now scroll up and let's see, and I guess maybe you should look at the second one.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, we weren't testing back here, so that's not really going to be helpful. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Here's another way of thinking about this, because you know, trying to make up these thoughts in my head while we're live, like sometimes I get lost a little bit. We were talking at the beginning of this pandemic that, oh my gosh, like ICU rooms are going to be filled and we're not going to have ventilators. Like this is like, you remember we were following charts where it was like only 4 more days until New York runs out of all the stuff. And we were freaking out. Mm-hmm. It feels very much like that in the news now. You're reading about Louisiana and Alabama, and like we have videos of like doctors walking out and protest. Crazy stuff's happening in the ER, right? But if you look at the deaths, I mean, it's nowhere near where it was in the panic back in April of 2020, and it's sure nowhere near where it was in January, where I don't remember in January. There was like this story that happened around September to February. It's a big window. But there was this story of, you know, we don't have to put people on ventilators, and we can turn people over, and people aren't dying quite as bad as we thought at the beginning. Like, it felt like the world had figured something out about how to treat COVID.
We also have the antibody,
Regeneron, and all of that stuff. But when you look at the deaths right here, put this up back on the screen just so people know what I'm talking about here. When you look at the deaths right now, people are kind of acting like ICU rooms are full in a way that they were back in May at the beginning of this. But in January, I don't remember the narrative quite being that bad. So
but back in May,
it was all New York City.
It was just New York City. I think, this should be the worst, like
I know, but
January to February.
Back in May, June, July of 2020, we had charts on the show where we were like, Tennessee is 4 days away from reaching capacity. Oregon is 20 days away from, and it was like all of us were counting down these days to where like all of our hospitals were so filled with COVID.
Yeah.
Yet I'm starting to see that in the news today.
Yes.
And so the only thing I can say is that maybe a year ago, New York City and some of these places were getting hit really hard and they were running out of ICU beds. And now maybe it's like small, medium-sized towns and southern states are doing this.
Yes. So I've heard a podcast on this. And they were just saying that the news is being a little sensationalist by, at the very least, hinting that all of the hospitals are being overrun, when in reality, it's usually rural hospitals, and they're speaking specifically about, like, COVID ICU beds, which they might have, like, 4.
This is what, I mean, we are doomed as a society.
Yeah.
If our world turns into this sensational, it's kind of like the thing I just said, the first video we showed, where we'll never hit 1,000 again. Well, it's because we probably were at 50,000 when it was really 1,000. And it's, all of these headlines that you'll see throughout the show are all written in this way.
Yeah.
Where I feel like I'm losing hope in humanity. Like, we have to have some accountability for this, right?
Yeah.
I know people blame F-stoppers for writing. Our writers write sensationalized headlines, that's the name of the game and that's how you click on things. But when you start playing around with this sort of headline around, health and a pandemic, it gets really scary when numbers aren't quite really what they mean.
Yeah, I think they can probably justify it in their mind as like, well, one, we're getting
saving
the clicks
people
and the views, but we're saving lives and we're convincing people to get the vaccine. I mean, I'm on board. I think everybody should get vaccinated. I think the vaccines are safe and everything. But yeah, to act like every hospital is completely overwhelmed, I don't think that's true at all. Yet, I mean, it could get worse, obviously. Speaking of that, and then we got to get on the move here. We got so many freaking videos. We got to quit talking. Louisiana actually had the most deaths ever, I believe yesterday, the 24th.
Okay.
At 139 deaths. So if there was ever a state that was like, things are the worst ever right now, it is Louisiana.
Pull up. Can you look up Mississippi real quick? I'm just curious.
I think I can do that.
Because I have a video on a news story about Mississippi, and I have not, I'm sure they're doing really poorly too.
So Mississippi, cases are off the charts for sure. Deaths are, I mean,
ticking up.
It's getting close to peaking as well. So.
Do we have any super chats?
Don't see any super chats. Let's keep on keeping on.
We start today with the FDA fully approving Pfizer's COVID vaccine. NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres joining me now.
Dude, I hate that mic is touching her throat. It really bums me out.
Dr. John, this is the first COVID vaccine to get full approval. Can you explain the difference between emergency authorization and full authorization for the folks at home? What does this mean for them?
And Allison, you bet. And like you're right, this is the first COVID vaccine to get full approval. And the difference there being we have 3 vaccines right now that have the emergency authorization, the emergency use authorization. And that was given back December, January timeframe, a little after that. When they measured that and when they looked at the data there, their main point was to make sure that it was safe and effective and it outweighed the dangers of COVID itself. And so it was a little bit more of a lenient process. They used 2 months worth of data to do it. They did make sure it was safe and effective, but it was a little faster than their normal approval process because we're in the middle of a pandemic, the middle of an emergency. Well, now fast forward to August, and what they wanted are these companies to give them 6 months of data after their human trial volunteers ended up getting their vaccine. So Pfizer started submitting data back in May, submitted it through August, and finally said, okay, now we've given you the data, go ahead and look at it. The FDA went through, crunched all the data, and they did a few things. Number 1, made sure it's safe. Number 2, make sure it's effective. But number 3, they're also looking at the manufacturing plants, the factories to make sure that those are up to snuff, that the quality of those factories and what they're putting out is sufficient, and they're going to make sure that these manufacturers follow patients for the next months and years to make sure it remains safe. The difference there, probably the big difference for people overall, is this is a permanent approval. This is something that doesn't just happen during the pandemic, but it's permanent. And like most other medications, you're going to see it being able to be ordered through your doctor's office, given to you at pharmacies like it is now, but even more so. And so it's going to be even advertised. They gave it a name, Allison. It's Comirnaty, which we haven't not had a name before, but that's the new name for it.
Oh, that's the name for the drug.
Yeah, there's a new name for it.
Comirnaty?
Comirnaty.
What? I have not heard of that. That is strange.
He said, and this is a permanent, I want to make a distinction, this is a permanent approval.
Yeah,
but how many drugs have we seen 10 years later are not FDA approved anymore and are pulled off the market? I feel like that's, I don't know about the vaccine world, I haven't followed vaccines enough, but one criticism with the FDA is that many times things are approved after many years of research, much more than 6 months,
sure,
only to be then pulled back, or the formula needs to be changed because there's all these side effects.
Yeah.
I was telling you Zantac, can't remember if I talked off camera about this, but Zantac is a heartburn pill. It's like a little triangular pill that you would take. You buy it everywhere.
Yeah.
It got pulled off the market, I think, early 2020 when all this stuff started happening, because it had these side effects that, were, I guess, killing enough people or giving enough, detrimental long-term side effects. They pulled it off, and I think it's back on the market. But, just because something's FDA approved doesn't mean that it's actually safe. It's kind of just like a way for us to think that enough research has been done. But you can't substitute long-term research,
sure,
just by having more eyeballs. A lot of people say, nothing has been studied more than this vaccine, which is probably true, but you still can't replace time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's true, but I'm sure you take drugs all the time that don't have 30, 40 years of testing done on it before you...
Not many. I mean, my Humira is.
What do you mean, not many? Of course, but like when you go to the hospital and stuff and you're not asking, what are you giving me? What are you about to inject in my body?
I think you'd be, well, maybe I'd be surprised on what they're giving me, but I think, yeah, if they're giving you like Tylenol and they're giving you antibiotics and they're giving you a lot of natural drugs and saline and stuff, like, I think there's a lot of stuff that we do have a long history of.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of it is, but like I remember when Katie was giving birth, afterwards especially, they are just injecting her with so many different painkillers and stuff, and I just remember thinking like, well, I guess we don't care about any of this,
Yeah.
So why are we going to pretend to be afraid of a vaccine?
Well, I was having this conversation with somebody here the other night who told me that their family has not been vaccinated. I'm learning there's a lot of non-vaccinated people here in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they're very rich, very smart, great people who are entrepreneurial minds. Like, these are very, very smart people. And you tend to, like, the media makes you believe that it's the dumb people, the rednecks in Alabama that I grew up with, that maybe I'm kind of, to begin with, are the ones who are not getting vaccinated. And then you meet guys who, have a net worth of $10 million and they own multiple companies and are very, very smart, and you're intimidated when you have conversations with them. And they're like, yeah, there's no way I'm getting that. And you're like...
Here's what I don't get, though. I wish that so many things, including this vaccine, but also gun control and abortion and all this stuff, I wish that if you told me that you were like not going to take the vaccine or whatever, I wish that I wouldn't be able to guess that you were a Republican and be right 99.9% of the time, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that so stupid? Shouldn't it be completely 50-50 down the line of people who feel uncomfortable about this vaccine for whatever reason? Like, what the heck does it have to do with being a conservative or a liberal? It's so crazy, but that's the way
things just line up that way. It's like when you're young, you're always like more socialist and you're more liberal and you think like, let's stick it to the man. But then as you get older and as you get more money and you have more investments, and especially if you start a business, if you're a business owner, many times you start to get a little bit more conservative. I mean, I've seen that with a lot of our friends in the photography world. They want to go out and change the world for this certain cause. And then all of a sudden their careers get better and better and better and better and better. And then it feels like they don't have to be straight up Republican, but they move, you tend to move more towards the center at least.
I mean, I understand leaning towards like government control versus personal responsibility. I get that. But this whole idea, like a Facebook friend of mine posted this thing on Facebook today that was basically bashing the FDA and how many times the FDA has been wrong and everything. And I just remember thinking like, well, obviously I know you're a ultra conservative. You probably love Donald Trump. And it's just weird that that's, you know, combined in any way.
Yeah.
What does that? And then I don't know if you saw Donald Trump did some MAGA rally thing.
I meant to watch that
And
because they said all this crazy stuff was going to happen, but I haven't seen it.
I just saw this one clip where he's like, "You should go get vaccinated," and the crowd starts booing, and he's like, "You don't have to, but I think you should."
Well, he campaigned like that last debate. He was like, "We have vaccines that are like days away," and in a way, he was right. Like, who knew 2 months later, a lot of people be. I mean, I think I was vaccinated 100 days after he made that statement. And everyone's like, no. But like he was saying the vaccines are coming and we weren't. I think,
you remember all the liberals saying they will never take Trump's vaccine because it's rushed and you can't trust it.
How did we switch on that?
Yeah,
like
so
that's
crazy.
something crazy that's happened in this pandemic is that Trump was on the brink of having a vaccine.
I mean, he really had nothing to do with it.
He had nothing to
do.
When I say he, I just mean he was in office and that was the narrative.
Yeah.
And then that was not going to save us. And I won't take it. And it's rushed, you know, Operation Warp Speed. And then all of a sudden, like, it was given to us sooner than we thought, and now it's the saving grace. And it's come full circle to where Trump now mentions the same vaccine that he mentioned in that debate less than a year ago, and his own people are booing it. Like, this is the kind of stuff that just has me freaked out about humanity. Like, we are so screwed. And maybe we've always been this way, every generation. It's just so magnified now, and we can see it so clearly.
Yeah.
A lot of us can see it.
Yeah.
If you're in either of these worlds, like, you can't see it. It's like, I'm watching the QAnon conspiracy video documentary, which episode 2, I mean, I almost fell asleep like 5 times. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying,
so
man.
dumb.
That somebody needs to take that documentary series and cut it down into like 3 hours because it's too slow. But the grand finale, like he basically figures out who Q is. It's good.
Okay, but you look at Q, and I find myself thinking there was a lot of stuff that, you know, I was like, the big one is that Hillary Clinton deleted all this stuff off of her servers. And then on Reddit, somebody finds through the history the guy who works for her, who asked a year prior, 2 years prior, how to scrub stuff off her hard drives. And then once that was discovered on Reddit, and this guy's anonymous profile, but still linked to him, they could figure it out. All of that just got deleted. He like deleted his account. All of those messages were deleted. And in my mind, I'm thinking, that clearly happened. Like, that guy deleted all of this, and Hillary knew there was something on these hard drives that needed to get off. But after starting to think about QAnon and watching this documentary, I'm like, maybe all of that was played out in this long game where people like me could get fooled into thinking this was a real user who had a 2 or 3 year history. You know what I mean? Like, when you can start making up this stuff, it's like very easy to buy. Like, Pizzagate and stuff is crazy, right? But when you start to see some of this stuff that's buried in, like, there's a lot of them, a lot of stories, you just think, man, if you could play a 5-year long game and have all these breadcrumbs all throughout the internet, you can make a lot of people believe something is very true, like, irrefutable.
Well, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realize, like, man, maybe the owner of Reddit or maybe some group in Indonesia could infiltrate Reddit and play. I mean, our adversaries have to be doing this, right? China and Russia have to be putting things out there that they know will materialize 10 years later, and it makes it feel so much more authentic because who in the world has 10 years or 5 years or 3 years, you know, to play these games?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember anything in that QAnon documentary where...
Wasn't he talking about something like there was sayings that Trump would say that he has put in there, and you're like, is that a coincidence? He would say, like, was it like tip top shape, you know, tip top, tip down, or something? I forget those phrases.
I think.
And then he says them, and you're like, how did that happen?
I think he just finds little sayings that Trump says, and then he put them in the Q
But they
drops.
aren't in there previously, right? It'd be like somebody saying, Patrick and Lee are going to say this, or Patrick and Lee believe this, or check out this thing with F-stoppers. And then a month later, we say a weird saying that we've never said that was mentioned.
So what are you suggesting right now? That it's
I'm just saying that it's very easy. In my mind, it's starting.
Are you a QAnon believer?
No, I don't believe in QAnon.
Okay.
I mean, I do believe that it exists. I just don't believe in the message. All I'm saying is you can build up these conspiracy theories, but when you start to play a longer and longer game, it starts to feel like how some of it does just bring up suspicions. I can see.
All right, we got a couple super chats. Sam Degree, in Holland, schools are opening next week without even 1.5 meter distancing. I will teach from home until the inevitable lockdown a month from now. And then Photog Mike says, I'm waiting for FDA approval before I do the milk crate challenge. I have heard of the milk crate challenge. I have no idea what it is. I'm an old man.
Should we just do it tomorrow?
I think it's a TikTok thing, I believe.
We got to do it with we got to do it with Elia Licardi.
Yeah, he gets here tomorrow.
None of us know what it is, and we should just do it.
Just do it? Well, okay, next video. We can't talk anymore. We just have to play videos.
As you all aware, the FDA approved full licensure of the Pfizer vaccine this morning. And as also I'm sure you're aware, back in August on the 9th, the Secretary articulated that it was his intent to mandate the COVID-19 vaccines upon FDA licensure or by mid-September to seek a waiver from the President. So now that the Pfizer vaccine has been approved, the department is prepared to issue updated guidance requiring all service members to be vaccinated. A timeline for vaccination completion will be provided in the coming days. The health of the force.
So this is funny because a lot of the military crowd is obviously like the super conservative crowd, and many of them are anti-vaccine. And I've actually seen videos where people are going up to people in uniform being like, are you going to get vaccinated? And they're all like, hell no, I'm not doing it. Hell no, hell no. So I was wondering what was going to happen when it becomes mandatory. And I was speaking to my jiu-jitsu instructor who's been in the military, and he was like, man, we had to get so many vaccines. We didn't even know what the hell we were getting. When you sign up for the military, you're basically property of the country, and they're sending you to die in many cases. Like, nobody cares what vaccines you're getting, what they're shooting into your arm. We got so much. He was like, we got what was that powder that people were mailing around?
Anthrax.
Anthrax vaccines. I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And he was like, yeah, I don't know why people are worried about it.
Here's what I think about that. That was in a time when nobody cared. Nobody was debating it. Nobody was protesting it. There wasn't even no one was divided in America. It wasn't that long ago that, remember, like Jenny McCarthy was kind of the first time that I heard about like anti-vaxxers. And that was
weird. It used to be this weird liberal thing.
It was like 5 or 10 years ago, maybe, and it was like with autism.
It might have been longer than that.
Was it?
It might have been.
But that was the first time. It's like I heard about anti-vaxxers and maybe flat earthers around the same time. I think a lot of the military, you just be like, yeah, man, I'm taking my shots. Like, they know what's best.
Sure.
But in today's environment, I mean, my dad's retired military, and he serves as a dentist, people near an army base. Most of his clients are military people. And he tells me, I mean, my dad got the vaccine, but he's like most, or a large percentage of the active military that come in there, or retired military, they're not going to get the vaccine. And so it makes me wonder, how will this play out? Because we're either about to see this division in our military where people are like, no way.
I mean, how could you say, yes, I will go into war. I will march into my imminent death, but I will not take this vaccine. Like, how can you possibly do that?
I just watched, what was that document? I told you I watched this documentary in Afghanistan. Restrepo.
I think that was it.
It's like, it's hard to watch. And a lot of those guys, it feels like they're basically fighting in the most dangerous part of Afghanistan, right? All this Afghanistan story is going on. I was like, I want to watch some real war movies and see what in the world is going on there, because I don't know. And so you watch these guys, and a lot of them don't think they're going to die, never thought they would serve there. Like, they never really, you sign up for the military thinking you could die. But especially if you sign up in a time when you're not at war,
Sure.
pre 9/11, you know, it's just, it doesn't cross your mind. And so I think
but-
for a lot of people, they're like, I can survive war. You can't kill me. But a vaccine that I have to take, I don't know.
But it's like, so you go into a room and they're like, all right, we've got 15 vaccines to give you. And then you're like, all right. And they do 14 shots. And then you're like, wait a minute.
well, I'm saying
Is this fifth one
I'm
the coronavirus?
I'm saying like 2 years ago, it wouldn't have been an issue. I think everybody in the military, everyone in the country probably, if we were like, man, there's this really bad virus that we have to, you know, vaccine against, we're all going to take it, you know, we would do it. But in this environment now where it's not just America, like it's other countries. Every country is dealing with this. People are fighting this mandate to get
weird.
vaccinated. That's when the military people say, you know what, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I think they would have 2 years ago. And this is why I think, you know, when our country starts dividing and the world starts moving into this crazy world that we're in, things like the military having a mandatory vaccination policy is going to divide our military potentially.
They already have mandatory vaccines. All right, moving on.
India has become the first country to approve the world's first DNA shot against the coronavirus. India's drug regulator has granted emergency use approval for Ridas Kadila's COVID-19 vaccine for adults and children aged 12 years and above. It is the second homegrown COVID-19 vaccine for India. Also, the first approved COVID-19 vaccine for children older than 12 in the country. The approval comes as a big boost to India's vaccination program, under which only about 9.18% of the entire population.
Is this a new type of vaccine? I've never heard of a DNA vaccine.
Yeah. I was trying to read a little bit more about it. I don't know, because the vaccine that we got is more traditional. So the mRNA vaccine, I'm going to butcher this, it can't or doesn't need to make it into the nucleus of the cell. It can just go into the cell and then replicate there and produce the proteins or antibodies that you need. And then the one that we have, it's what? It's like encapsulated particles of a dead vaccine or something.
A dead virus?
Dead virus.
I don't remember.
And ours is the J&J is a more traditional one. Neither one of those, I think maybe ours did ours include like proteins or something already? The DNA one is completely different because it does need to get into the nucleus of the cell to produce the antibodies that you need. And I don't know what they keep talking about in this video, but I read that this is also, maybe the way that the DNA one is so unique is that it's not injected. Or it's injected, but it doesn't have a needle. So the way they do it is they just like probe you, and the thin layer of water or whatever it's encapsulated in penetrates your skin without an actual physical needle
Well,
that
I
jabs
saw
you.
this years ago. It's like a compressed air gun thing, and it shoots a mist and it can push through your skin.
But
So-
all the articles about it are talking about this new jab, and a jab means an injection, right?
poke, yeah.
Maybe it's still a jab. I don't know, but it's needleless, which
All
is
right,
pretty cool.
Moving on.
Mississippi, the low vaccine uptake seems to have just doomed the state's hospitals as the huge number of new infections and newly very sick people are just swamping the system. In that state that frankly has enough to deal with, they are now facing a new challenge related to COVID. The Mississippi State Department of Health confirming today that, quote, at least 70% of the recent calls to poison control in Mississippi have been related to ingestion of livestock or animal formulations of ivermectin purchased at livestock supply centers.
I am so glad you remembered, because I read this on Reddit a few nights ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to remember to put this in the video, and then I forgot.
Well, she keeps going on, I think, a little bit longer. This is a good clip.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, play a little bit more.
Ivermectin. Why are people taking livestock formulations of ivermectin in Mississippi? Ivermectin, livestock formulation, that's a horse dewormer. Literally, people won't take the vaccine because they're super suspicious of that, but they're taking horse deworming medication that they're buying at a feed store for COVID?
I feel like she's looking you right in the eye as she's talking right now. Is there more?
Keep going.
Why, on top of everything else Mississippi has to deal with right now, why are they dealing with this? I don't know, but I have a guess.
We know that our FDA has in many ways failed us by not allowing for the use of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, both of which are used around the world to reduce COVID hospitalizations and deaths.
I pelted them with questions about COVID-19 and the vaccine and therapeutics, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, as well as other proactive treatments and practices were already helping COVID-19 patients all across the country.
On June 5th, Weinstein discussed the benefits of a drug called ivermectin, which can and is around the world used to treat and prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
You thought it was just hydroxychloroquine, right? Kind of, me too. I guess I haven't been paying enough attention, but apparently they have been pushing this as well.
Dude, I feel like there's so much to say about this story.
Yeah, one is you do have a lot to say.
One,
for
she
yourself.
just said, I haven't been paying attention. Apparently there's another one. People have been talking about ivermectin for a dang year and a half. Like, it's been out there from the beginning.
That's true.
The other thing is, like, ivermectin, yes, you can buy it like this in a paste for animals. When this story broke, all the tweets were like, it's funny how the sheep are taking sheep dewormer to survive. Like, the Republicans are sheep, and they're taking the sheep dewormer. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, because in many cases, this is the only way to get it. And I've looked.
You go ahead and justify yourself here.
I've looked into it. There are some pastes that include other material in it. And I haven't read enough to know if that's dangerous, but this literally has just the drug in it. You can take this and you will be fine.
Hold on. This is not medical advice. Neither Patrick nor I are doctors. You should not consult your own doctor. You should not be listening to us for COVID-19 medical advice.
Let me see if I can articulate this a little bit better.
Please do.
This story is all about ivermectin should not be taken by humans. Ivermectin is in the WHO's list of most valuable medicines in humanity, for humanity. Okay. It is taken for a bunch of different things. It kills parasites. It's an antibacterial medicine.
Dewormer.
It kills parasites. My dad was buying this at the beginning of the pandemic because he has rosacea. I mean, you know my dad, his face is very red. I mean, my face is kind of red. And dermatologists have this exact formulation that they prescribe to you, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And he's like, can I just go to the Tractor store and get this and put it on my face? And she's like, I legally, as a professional, can't tell you that, but it's exactly the same thing, and this is like $5. So you can
eat it or rub it on your face.
Yeah.
It's a miracle drug.
Look up ivermectin and then go on Google and then start at any time in the past and in the search before the pandemic. Before anyone talked about ivermectin with the pandemic, and you get rid of all those articles. It's
this is paste.
It's paste.
And you eat the paste?
I mean, if you can't get access to it, I have pill forms. I actually took some of them in Italy because we were all like...
Where'd you get those?
My dad got them from India and shipped them to me that when we came down with COVID. He's like, do you have your ivermectin? I was like, man, I left it back in the States because I don't need that. And then I think he or you both shipped it to me.
So wait. So have you eaten the horse paste?
I haven't taken that because I got the pill form, which is the FDA-approved version of the pill that you take for humans. So it's a drug that you can take.
So you didn't actually eat the horse
I never
pills.
did, but I would. It's like...
Do it. Prove it.
Oh my gosh, is this what this has come to? Don't we need like a super chat for this?
I think, yeah.
Okay,
you should get paid before you die. Like, that news thing that we just watched was about people calling and poisoning themselves. I don't want you eating this on camera.
Okay, this is my next thing. So I have put the link to, I looked up that memo from Mississippi's Health, whoever it was from, and I read it. Go to our folder here and open up, because this is another thing, it goes back to these headlines. Look up ivermectin memo. This link is in the description of this video.
Uh-oh.
I think this is kind of important because words matter. I've highlighted some of this. So it says, at least 70% of the recent calls have been related to ingestion of livestock or animal formulations of ivermectin. If you read that the right way, it means, oh my gosh, people are dying and calling poison control.
Yep.
All that sentence really means is that, I mean, who calls poison control? I've never called poison control in my life. If you were considering eating this, you might call poison control and say, hey, tell me about ingesting this.
Yeah, that's true.
And so 70% of the calls, like that means absolutely nothing. The second part of this bulletin, 85% of the callers had mild symptoms, but one individual was instructed to seek further evaluation due to the amount of ivermectin reportedly ingested. So that means one person out of all these people in Mississippi was like told over the phone, hey, you probably should seek something. The next highlight that I have down here says, no hospitalizations due to ivermectin toxicity have been directly reported to the Mississippi Poison Control. So like my point is the way that story is presented is that all these people in Mississippi, these dumb Mississippi people, are eating this horse paste. Yes, that is a sentence I just had to say. It sounds horrible. Like she said, along with the ICU rooms being full, this is what they also have to deal with.
Yeah.
Yet not one person overdosed. If you read into this, the amount of this paste that you have to ingest to clinically, scientifically overdose, it's like 10 or 20 pens, which is well beyond what the people...
How does it affect a horse then? If that's enough for a whole horse.
So on this one, I just noticed this. It has the weight, because you take this by weight. Like aspirin, you just take an aspirin. Sure. Imagine though you had to take aspirin based on weight, you'd probably have a smaller dosage and you'd take 6 of those pills, and maybe I'd take 4 of the pills. This one says, well, let's see, this one has 250 pounds. This would be more than what I need. So I would just, am I going to take this? I would just ingest. Does this even work?
Dude, I can't believe you're about to taste this. Do you have any...
That is not good. That tastes like straight up. It's like, it doesn't have the flavoring of sunscreen.
Why are you eating horse medication? Oh my gosh. Oh, what does this show come to?
Think about it though. This can be taken.
It's all in your teeth.
It also serves as teeth whitening?
Oh my God.
This can be taken by horses, by sheep, by cat, all these animals. It's also taken by humans. I mean, before I had COVID, I had the pills right here. Now, whether or not this actually prevents or helps with COVID, there is a lot of scientific debate. Despite what she says, there is a lot of studies that are, some are not, none of them are really that inclusive, right? Conclusive.
Yes.
But there's been a lot of studies on this, and people do have, scientists and researchers and medical professionals do have different opinions on this. But the idea that this drug is dangerous, you're going to overdose and go to the hospital. That memo said not one person has overdosed, despite 70% of the calls being about it. It's kind of one of those things that, like, where do you draw the line?
It is fake news.
Where do you draw the line, though?
Unless you die tonight.
What if Trump, what if Fox News said, I've been listening to Joe Rogan, he's been saying this too. What if all of these other, Joe Rogan's not really right. I don't know, he
jumps back and forth.
He jumps back and forth.
He's reasonable, he thinks.
What if they were all saying, you need to be on high doses of zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, and you need to be working out and losing weight during this pandemic, and you need to go out and exercise? Imagine if that was the narrative. It wasn't horse paste. I kind of understand it. I get it, right? But it was lose weight, exercise, take natural vitamins that are also not FDA approved, because the FDA, guess what, doesn't approve natural drugs. Wouldn't it be a little scary if the media was sensationalizing something that I also agree with? Get on vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and work out and get healthier? I mean, perhaps that's what our media should be telling us to do.
Yeah.
Yet they're not.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a scary world if they were like, this news organization is saying, just take these natural supplements and you'll survive COVID? That'd be kind of, I feel like that would be really scary. And I understand why people see stories like this and get so frustrated with it. Because they're not really telling the whole truth, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying ivermectin is a cure-all, but ivermectin has been taken a lot prophylactically in India. And as we just saw with the numbers, maybe in the last episode, India's death rate is per million. It's like the 162 country. And they had this huge outbreak of Delta. But a lot of India has been taking the ivermectin. I mean, that's where my dad had to buy the pills from, because you can't get it prescribed here in the U.S. at the moment. Not because it's illegal to. We've been prescribing ivermectin for a long time. It's because there is this political environment where doctors are like, I'm not going to prescribe that now.
So we've gotten 2 super chats. One from Ulysses that says, finish the tube of anti-COVID. And Photog Mike says, come on, Patrick Q. Finish the tube. You know what I think you should do?
Dude, it says for what does this say? I'm gonna have to do this. It's still in my mouth. It's like it tastes like Robitussin kind of. 1,200 pounds. Like, I'm not. Why would you take something that says it's for a 1,200 pound?
Because people in Mississippi are illiterate.
I mean, I guess there's a lot of people in Mississippi. They're 1,200 pound people.
Here's what I think you should do, because we just got $17 in super chats. I think you should put it on your cheeks for your rosacea. And we'll finish the show like that. We also got a super chat from Sam Murr. Says, funny that scientific studies convince some people to take ivermectin, but even more studies don't convince them to take the vaccine or wear a mask. I completely agree.
Wait, say that again?
He's just saying that people will, look at these scientific studies, and there might be some truth to the ivermectin, who knows. But there's way more studies about the vaccine, but for some reason all these anti-vaxxers think that the vaccine is,
Oh, so somebody wrote in the comments, Lee, why don't you talk about all the deaths caused by COVID? The COVID vaccine, or the coronavirus.
We have talked about the VAERS stuff, and I just don't think there have been that many deaths from the vaccine.
Somebody here in Puerto Rico was trying to say, because we just had this new mandate, and in the mandate, I don't know if you read it, because everybody's debating, like, restaurants now you have to show your passport, your vaccine passport, to go into restaurants now.
Yeah.
Unless you do like a 50% capacity, which really hurts the restaurants now. The government is saying you can only serve 50% of your customers, or you need these vaccine passports, and people are anti-vaccine passports. In that decree that our governor has released, it had all of these numbers of like our rates in Puerto Rico and the death rate and everything. And somebody was like, the death rate for people who have gotten COVID while vaccinated was like 2%. And I was like, what? That seems incredibly high. And I look it up. The number of people that are dying that have had the vaccine from COVID is like 0.001%. It's like, I don't want to say statistically, what is that?
But 2% of COVID deaths have been vaccinated?
No.
What did you just say about the 2% first?
That's what the guy said.
Okay.
He was trying to say, get vaccinated, because only 2% of people that are vaccinated die of COVID.
Maybe what he meant to say was only 2% of people currently dying of COVID were vaccinated. 98% are unvaccinated.
I don't think that's what he said, but I'd have to go back and look. But I looked up the number, and the people that are dying of COVID who have been vaccinated, and again, this is a number that's kind of a moving target. Depends on how you like come up with these numbers, but it was like 1 out of 1,000? 1 out of 10,000? It was 0.001, so it's 100. It's 1 out of 1,000. I'm like, but maybe the guy who left the comment in here, and if you're still in here, feel free to argue with me or Lee or us or whatever. But how many people have died just from straight up getting the vaccine? I mean, that's got to be statistically zero, right? And how do you prove it? Can you prove that the vaccine gave you a heart attack, or?
Well, the other issue is that we gave the vaccine to the oldest people in our population
who are going to die anyway.
Yeah, they literally, like, people in a nursing home on average die within 6 months, like, who are in an assisted living facility. So statistically speaking, if you don't do anything or you do whatever's normal, they will die within 6 months. So if you give somebody a vaccine and they die in 3 to 6 months, like, that's statistically what was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And if you start putting them on a list of people who died because of the vaccine, that's just not true.
I do have to say, if you're going to take ivermectin, get the pills. It's still just sitting there. It's like,
yeah, I don't think you're supposed to eat the horse. You
don't think?
No.
Well, when I went to the feed store, I bought that as like backup, but I actually bought this serum, this guy who spoke no English and just Spanish, and I explained what I wanted, pulls out this syringe and puts it in this big bottle that had the rubber seal top, sticks the needle in, and just pulled out so many like ounces, milliliters of the syringe that I needed. And then the idea was to put it in like nasal spray or swish it around your tongue. So I didn't get the paste. That's the first time I've tasted the paste.
Let's move on.
Dude, if you came down with COVID right now and you were positive,
I don't know that I'm eating the horse paste.
But would you take the pill?
I would need to do a little research, but if it's got a picture of a horse on the box, I'm going to have to do a little extra Googling.
And apparently there are some that have other ingredients. I don't even know if this will tell you, but this... I'll keep moving on with the show.
Please, let's move on.
The mask war is refusing to go away even as COVID cases and deaths surge in places where the rhetoric is most heated and where it's hottest, right, including Florida. But it's something that we have seen across the country. Shouting at school boards, confrontations in parking lots, and in one case, an elementary teacher ending up with stitches. Here's CNN's Rosa Flores.
When it comes to masks in schools, it's some parents who are behaving badly.
Have you seen that guy? The guy with the dreads who was
Dude, I saw like some metal video where a guy like made a...
I've seen that too.
Having face-to-face confrontations, and even burning masks. The tension and division mostly fueled by misinformation.
Let them breathe! Let them breathe!
In Texas, a parent ripping off a teacher's face mask at school last week, according to the school district's superintendent.
I don't want these mask wars being fought in our schools. I don't care right now what you believe.
In Northern California, an elementary school teacher had to get stitches for cuts and lacerations to his face when an argument with a parent over masks turned physical.
The female principal intervened to say, hey, it's time to go. Like, you stop.
Now the parent facing multiple charges, including battery on a school employee, according to the district attorney. The rage spilling into school board meetings for months now, like this one in Utah.
So I taught junior high school, and you don't scare me.
In Pennsylvania.
Stop, please.
Tennessee and Wisconsin, too.
Enough. This is inappropriate. These folks are your neighbors.
With some meetings abruptly ending in the midst of screaming protests.
Winter, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
And public officials openly threatened.
We know who you are. No more masks.
How to combat this war over masks? This dad, who says his 5-year-old understands the concept of wearing face coverings,
and it's disappointing that more adults around here can't seem to grasp it,
is pleading for civility in the national conversation. Rosa Flores, CNN, Houston.
I don't know how I feel. Like, I go back and forth with the kids and the mask thing. I definitely lean towards just letting parents choose and kids choose what they want to do. But if at a certain point, if the deaths are as bad as, the news might have you believe, then maybe we do need masks in school. But then I would say if a fabric mask that literally hasn't been washed in a year, that's currently what I'm wearing, it obviously doesn't do much to protect. I think I read some study that said it might protect like 10 to 15% of the time. If that is what you're putting in between your child who could potentially die, then is it even safe to send your kids to school at that point? And then at that point, should you force them to wear N95 masks? And do they even have N95 masks that fit babies' faces? And it's like, it's crazy.
And I think we're going to start getting into the masks here. Good news for you guys. We were only like halfway through our videos.
No, we got to finish quick.
My dad's been saying this the whole time. He keeps talking about, what is it called? Fit checked or something? There's like a phrase where he's like, maybe in dentistry it's not a big deal, but if you're a surgeon, you're like, especially if you're working with more, viral stuff, you have a mask, and I don't know this process, but do they like fit check the mask for each person, and then you buy a mask that?
I don't know.
He's just always talking about that, like, none of these masks fit you at all, and like.
Yeah, when I breathe, it's coming out of here. It's not coming through the fabric. It's coming out of the top.
And so, like, you're right. If you have a mask, like, here's the mask. Do I have a mask on me? Like, I had to start carrying masks again. I've been maskless for so long after I got the vaccine. And then recently, like, I feel like I have to have this on. I'll just go to the plaza, and there's a guy with a gun, and he's like, where's your mask? And I'm like, I'm outside vaccinated. I've had COVID. I'm about to go right here and eat.
I'm not going inside anywhere. Dude, when I was at the tennis courts today, they came out and they were like, have you checked in at the desk? And I said, no. Can I just give you my member number? And they were like, no, you got to go in there. And I said, well, I don't have a mask. How am I supposed to go inside? And they said, you're not allowed to play tennis. And I said, how are you telling me I can't play? I don't want to go inside. I don't want to interact with you. I will give you my number right now. And he was like, I'm going to make an exception this one time. But if you ever come out here again without a mask, I'm like, we currently do not have any mask mandate for playing tennis outside. We used to, but not.
Here's an interesting story I wanted to share that you just reminded me of. So I've been going to this gym outside of our neighborhood because it's a better gym and the gym here sucks. I've been going to this gym and like for the last like month or so, I think there's like, I don't know where we have been, right? It's like you have the vaccine and you don't have to wear masks inside if you've been vaccinated. But then about a month ago, there was this new CDC thing that said vaccinated people have to wear masks again, right? Well, along that way, I don't know what the government of Puerto Rico has said. I just haven't been paying attention, right? So now when I go into the gym, like I don't know what the law is. I mean, I know what it is right now because they just changed it a few days ago. But for the last month, I've been going into the gym wearing the mask and checking in, like doing my fob and everything.
Watch out, you're getting your horse paste on there.
And I wear the mask. And then like as I start working out for the last month, I've noticed a lot of people now, mostly Puerto Ricans, are just like pulling the mask down or not even wearing the mask. And I'm like, thank goodness I can now work out in the gym because nothing's worse than playing a sport or working out with a mask on, right? Yeah. So I have not really been wearing the mask in the gym at all, right? But I'm still playing this weird game. Like, why don't I just have the balls to just walk in there with no mask? Because in 10 minutes, I'm not going to be wearing a mask anyway, right? So I play this little facade of like, I wear the mask, I check in, and then I immediately like pull it down and start working out. Well, the other day I saw this girl with the face shield in the mask, right? She looked like me a year ago, and she's working out. And we've changed our protocol. Now vaccinated people still have to wear masks indoors, apparently, right? That's kind of where we're at.
Maybe.
But we
in high-risk places.
Okay, but we also have this thing going on where, like, if you're eating and drinking, you magically just don't have to wear a mask now, right? When you're eating and drinking in a restaurant, you don't have to wear a mask. And in Puerto Rico, I don't know about in the States, we now have this 50% rule. You need to also have like 50% less of your maximum capacity. So here I am in the gym with the mask off, chewing gum while I'm on the elliptical with a water bottle. And I'm thinking, one, this gym is well below 50%, right? This gym is at 10%.
Sure.
If somebody comes up to me and says, hey, man, you need to put your mask on, can I just be like, I'm eating?
Oh, yeah.
Like, does bubble gum, like, and if it doesn't count, because I'm not ingesting it.
You have to be in a seated position, though.
Yeah, what is the difference? Like, why can I not be on a treadmill with water and chewing gum? Like, why, like, really, let's really think about this logically. Why is that any different? Yes, I'm breathing a little harder. I'm breathing like 3 or 4 times more than if I was eating. But like, is it real? I can go to a restaurant and eat indoors without a mask on, and no one will say a word. My dad was like, you can't go on an airplane without a mask. And I had the dog, so I didn't really do this. But I was like, Dad, I bet you I could take my mask off and just casually eat and drink very, very slowly.
The whole time.
And I bet you not once would anybody say, hey, put your mask on.
It's so stupid.
But we have these like, and so anyway, I know I've gone on this rant. I watch these videos and I'm like, this is insane, right? That we're really debating about kids wearing masks and then they go to the lunchroom and they get to take them off probably because they're eating and drinking. Like this all feels...
And then they go over to their friend's house and they go to the community pool.
It feels incredibly silly. It feels like there's a portion of our population that is holding onto this mask as like, this is the one thing that I think will save us besides the vaccines, but like we need this thing. And as we're about to see in the next video, and you already alluded to, this thing is only doing like 10%. It's not doing anything.
Let's see.
A recent study shows that N95 and K95 masks offer substantially higher filtration efficiency of 46% and 60% respectively, compared to commonly used face cloth coverings or surgical masks which have lower mitigation properties against airborne disease transmission. Findings published in the journal Physics of Fluids in Waterloo University indicated that these medical masks filtered out more than 50% of the exhaled aerosol accumulated ventilated indoor that can potentially spread COVID-19 virus when inhaled by people. The effectiveness of the different types of masks was examined by simulating a person's breathing and exhalation of aerosol droplets, which are approximately 0.001 millimeters in diameter, suspended in the air in a large unventilated room. Health officials around the world primarily believe that SARS-CoV-2 virus was spread through droplets by sneezing, talking, or coughing. However, earlier this year, a number of experts acknowledged aerosols as the most dominant transmission of COVID-19. One professor of the study did not dismiss the fact that wearing face coverings is useful, but pointed out the notable difference in the effectivity of various types of masks. Data analysis from Yarusevich team proves that high-quality N95 and KN95 masks paired with high ventilation capacity are best at warding off COVID-19.
So I don't know if it's easy to understand what they were saying in there, but
it wasn't quite as fulfilling as I hoped.
High ventilation means open air areas, right?
Yeah.
The worst place you can be in is an office where the ventilation is just recircling the air. That's what the study says. And a few key points here, I had these written down. This is from the actual study. The results also suggest that while higher ventilation capacities are required to fully mitigate aerosol buildup, more open air would alleviate the problem of catching COVID. Even relatively low air changes lead to lower aerosol buildups compared to the best performing masks in unventilated spaces, which means wearing a good mask in a closed area is far worse than wearing no mask in a very well ventilated place. So I noticed this with my sister. She's having to go back to work in the office, but they have to wear masks, which if they would just stay home and work, that is a much more...
Well, obviously.
Or if they could, like...
Open the windows.
Open the windows or be outside. The other thing, 10% filtration for cloth. This is cloth. This is doing 10%. Maybe even less because, like you, I'm not washing this, and I'm just putting it all over my face all the time. And 12% for surgical masks.
The paper blue ones?
The blue ones, 12%. I don't know if I have this here, the efficacy of the N95 and the K95 masks was...
What did they say, like
46%. 46%.
Which makes sense. I mean,
less than 50%.
Yeah.
And so, this is my dad's been arguing the whole time, is he's not an anti-masker, but he's just saying, in the medical field, we have to be fit checked for these masks to where it's completely sealed.
Yeah.
And
if you were really in a lab working on viruses and stuff, you would be in the whole get-up,
right.
like the rubber suit
right.
with the...
Well, and the other thing is, I think, and I don't know what the OSHA standards are, but he has to change masks between every patient. I've had this mask for weeks, months. I think Kristen does wash these, but, you're supposed to be changing them every patient, and if you don't, I mean, you should, but if you're with one patient, there's also a time frame. And for the first time ever, I heard on the plane ride from Italy back to the States, somebody on the overhead said, you need to change your mask every 3 hours or 90 minutes. And that was the first time I've ever heard anyone even mention that.
But what if my mask is a year and a half old at this point? Do I still have to change it every 3 hours?
So it just makes you wonder, really, what are the masks doing? I mean, they're saving us like 10 to 20%. And in some ways, maybe that's a huge number. 10 or 20% in a lot of things would be massive. But in a time period, in a setting throughout the day, I feel like this is not really doing a whole lot.
I agree. What's next?
Moments ago, more than 75 doctors staged a walkout to protest the number of COVID patients coming to the hospitals who have not been vaccinated. Let's bring in Carrie Sanders, because Carrie, you're in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, at this doctor's walkout. Carrie, and I know the area very well, what Americans don't understand is for every unvaccinated person that's filling up an ICU bed, that means with the hospitals jammed, somebody with a heart attack, and I've known somebody in this position, goes there, has trouble getting in, can't get treatment, can't get a bed. It is a nightmare for the doctors. It is a nightmare for the nurses. And to the doctor's point of view, it's worse yet for sick people that want help from them.
That is truly reflective of the frustration that you see behind me. And these doctors have gathered, some coming off their shifts to come out here, gathering to try to tell people, please, first of all, ignore the nonsense and the absurdities that you're hearing people say at public meetings and recognize the value of what a vaccine will do. 85% of the ICU beds in Florida are full. Now, there are some hospitals that have no space in the ICU. They've turned cafeterias, they've turned conference centers over to beds to house patients because they are so overwhelmed. Dr. JT.
See, like when he says the hospital beds are at 85% full in Florida, but I don't think we're up to this, 85% of deaths in Florida that we were from January or whatever.
Does that mean
the
we've
math
gotten
just doesn't add up?
Does that mean we've gotten less beds and we're hitting 85 with a smaller number of beds?
Why would we have less beds?
I don't know, but wouldn't that make sense?
Sure.
We have less beds, therefore we're at the same. We're overflowing, but you're saying it's not as bad as it was back earlier.
Yeah, and I don't recall them saying that 120% of ICU beds have been filled in January in Florida. I don't recall that being a problem.
I mean, if you have a surplus, if you have 15% availability, isn't that still, you haven't met the threshold?
I don't know. I mean, he said some hospitals are totally full. Obviously, you don't want that to be the case. But
Narsky is joining us here. She's one of the doctors. First of all, you hear that woman at the school board saying the absurdity. How does that make you feel, and how do you combat it?
It's incredibly frustrating because we know vaccines are safe and effective, and it's people who go out and talk against them that really go against physicians and medicine and science, and it's not the message we want to get across to people. Vaccines are safe, and we need to get our communities vaccinated.
I was watching this and I was like, do you think every doctor in the background is like, you had to pick the hottest one? You had to pick the hottest doctor to like be on TV?
I was thinking she looks kind of crazy to me. I really have a problem when people shave off their eyebrows and then draw them on with a magic marker. That is not attractive to me.
What do you think of that? Because
I just feel like a natural eyebrow looks better.
Not the eyebrows.
Oh, sorry.
I'm thinking like the Hippocratic Oath. I'm thinking of like, as a doctor, you're taking the duty, like you have to like do everything you can to save the patient and do everything in their best interest. Yet all these doctors are just standing outside like, did they just turn their whole back on all the patients in there at the moment?
Well, that's the argument that I've seen a lot of the anti-vaxxer people talking about. There was this...
Are you trying to pigeonhole me into that group?
Yes. Well,
I'm just looking at that and thinking like, dude, what are all these doctors? If I was in there having a surgery and like all the doctors went outside to
I don't think every doctor went outside to stand in the back of the video. But
then what is the doctor protest? It's like, let's pick and choose a few. Like if you have a walkout, it's like if you have a union strike.
I don't know.
Are you picking and choosing, being like, you know what, Amazon, we're going to keep enough in there?
Did I even hear that was a protest? Maybe I missed that part.
Yeah, it was the doctors walk out and protest. Florida doctors are.
What are they protesting against?
They're protesting against people not getting the vaccine. That's the protest.
Okay.
And I'm like, what is that successful? Did that persuade people to say, you know what, these doctors aren't going to... It just seems like a weird protest for doctors to make.
I don't know. I mean, obviously they got the news to show up. It got on the biggest coronavirus news show
but
there
did
is.
It do anything? Was it effective, or could it have been
there could be one anti-vaxxer who today saw you eat and then smear horse paste on your face. And he's like, man, I don't want to be that big of an idiot. I'm just going to get the vaccine. And so thanks to you and those doctors who did a protest, we're going to save a life.
Seems a little strange to me, though.
All right, let's move on.
With a frantic rush to evacuate stranded Americans and desperate Afghans, and despite pleas from U.S. allies at a G7 meeting this morning to stay longer, President Biden is sticking with his self-imposed August 31st deadline for U.S. forces to leave Afghanistan.
We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better.
It follows a secret meeting Monday in Afghanistan between CIA Director William Burns and a top Taliban leader who previously spent 8 years in prison after being arrested by the CIA. After the meeting, the Taliban declaring the U.S. must go by the end of the month, as promised, threatening consequences if not. The president saying he's asked for contingency plans to stay longer if needed, but that he's worried about a terror attack there.
I'm also mindful of the increasing risks that I've been briefed on. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport
U.S. officials tell NBC News 4,000 Americans and their families have been evacuated from Afghanistan, but thousands more remain trapped. The U.S. is still relying on the Taliban to allow safe passage for Americans to the airport that the State Department warns is a dangerous trip. And the Taliban is now vowing to block Afghans from leaving. The White House says evacuations have accelerated 12,000 people in the last 12 hours. But a top Democrat argues it's very unlikely the U.S. will be able to get all Americans and Afghan allies out in 7 days.
It's hard for me to imagine all of that can be accomplished between now and the end of the month.
Republicans slamming President Biden for the chaotic withdrawal.
Particularly after the decision made today and what we heard today, he will have blood on his hands. People are going to die, and they're going to be left behind.
So this whole Afghanistan story has broke since the last time we've done a journal.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't, like, this show's not a political show. I know a lot of politics comes into it because we live in this crazy political world. And coronavirus has, like, divided the country and the world politically in some ways. But I just wanted to put that in there because it just, you know, some people are saying this is, like, one of the darkest days for America, like, in the since the Vietnam War. They're comparing it to that, you know? And when you see these videos coming out of Afghanistan,
pretty crazy.
It's definitely made me reflect a lot on, like, why were we there? And it's ironic because maybe 2 months ago I would say, yeah, we absolutely should be there. And I haven't really given it a lot of thought, you know? But you start seeing, like, the humanitarian crisis that's going to be in Afghanistan that's already there. And it's just so sad. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's been weighing on my heart the last, like, 10 days or whenever this happened. You know, the first part is this political thing, like who was right? Was Trump right, or Trump set this up? And then I kind of agreed with Biden. I was like, maybe we should get out of here. But then now as I see it playing out, I'm like, I don't think he handled that correctly either. The way that this is.
I don't know what the answer is there, though. Getting back to COVID, Photog Mike says the disinformation dozen has spread 65% of all misinformation across the social media, according to the Center for Countering Digital Hate. You know the disinformation dozen? That sounds familiar, but I don't know what that is.
I have no idea what that is. I would think that's like the 12 most popular. Oh, I think, is it 12 like people or 12 accounts?
That's what I
have taken over social media and
they
spread.
Start these memes and these.
Dude, if that's true, like, what if ivermectin is like total bullshit?
Yeah, and you just ate horse shit.
What if the vaccine is total bullshit? Like, what if all of that stemmed from like 12 people? Like, it's just, I feel like disinformation is the biggest hurdle humanity has to deal with. I think it's greater.
For dumb people.
No, man, it's like everybody. It's everybody. So this video, put this on, you got to start it over. Talking about disinformation. This is something I saw on a buddy's Facebook page, and I was like, wait, what? And it says this has been fact-checked, and this is, like, false. And so I click on it, and you hit play. Have you seen this?
No.
And it says, I say we close down the national media for 30 days and watch 80% of the world's problems go away. And I'm like, how do you fact-check that? Like, how is that disproven and, like...
It's just a joke.
What do you mean it's just a joke? Yeah, it's just like a saying that could be true. It could, you know, could be something to think about. Could be like Joe Rogan says that. You could say that. I could say that. Like, turn off the TV and most of your problems would disappear.
Yeah.
Yet Facebook has blocked this material from you, and you have to click it to see it. But hold on.
Oh, there's more.
There is more.
Oh, shit.
I clicked. I was like, wait a minute. Let me see what this fact check is. And it was really interesting. I thought it was interesting. So, sorry, I'm goofing around on Facebook here trying to figure out how to work it. See why? It's been fact-checked because Jim Carrey didn't say that. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was a little weirded out that, like, that's Jim Carrey, right? But I thought maybe that isn't Jim Carrey. But Jim Carrey really has nothing to do, to me, with that meme. The meme all lies in the sentence.
I don't know. The only reason why I was interested in it, because I thought Jim Carrey said it. That's interesting.
You said, oh, it's a joke because Jim Carrey's a comedian?
But it's just, I mean, it's not a scientific or mathematical thing he's saying. He's just like, hey, turn off the TV and your life will be better. That's what he's saying.
I know. So, like, isn't it? I don't know. I just feel like, does that need to be fact-checked? And when do we draw the line of what does and doesn't?
I don't know that it needs to be fact-checked. Like, I don't know if money needs to be spent to find it. But if a meme comes out with a celebrity's face and that celebrity comes out and says, I did not say that, that is not true, then I kind of like the fact. I mean, you just said you feel like disinformation is the biggest problem humans have. Well, Facebook got this one right.
Maybe. It got it right in some ways because he didn't say it, but it's also just weird that, like, what if he did say it? And Facebook was like, I don't want you to believe that.
If they're wrong, then they're wrong.
I don't know. I was just like, is fact-checking going a little far?
Back now with a
Play the
surprising
first video first. Go in the wrong direction.
What?
Here. The video before this, I think. Oh, no, you're right. You're right.
Accept your apology.
Back now with a surprising hours-long delay of Vice President Kamala Harris's flight to Vietnam as the U.S. Embassy dealt with 2 new cases of that mystery illness known as Havana syndrome. And
I haven't even heard of this.
You haven't heard of this?
And this is what you put in the title, right? This is what the whole
one of the big
show's about.
stories was our vice president went to Vietnam, literally where Saigon happened, and we like pulled out of South Vietnam and we fell to the Viet Cong and all this stuff. And we had the helicopter shot of us like leaving our embassy when this was like 69 or something, well before we were born. And then we have the Afghanistan story, which is like us pulling out of our embassy, and they, like people are comparing it. And how ironic was that she went to Vietnam right when this was all happening.
Why did she go there?
I don't remember. She was gonna like talk about peace and like public relations with our countries and stuff.
Okay.
But while she's there, she's supposed to travel somewhere else, and they cancel her travel because of this Havana virus.
Okay.
And so this is what this news story is.
Mitchell joins us now. Andrea, this was very unusual.
That's right, Lester. It was a last-minute delay on the vice president's high-profile trip to Vietnam after embassy staffers reported acoustic symptoms similar to the so-called Havana syndrome over the weekend. At least one is to be medevac for treatment. Security officials decided there was no threat to the vice president since the embassy staff had been working from home because of COVID. NBC has reported as many as 200 reported cases at posts all over the world of this still mysterious ailment. 3 hours late, Vice President Harris arrived in Hanoi, where we are told she will be carrying out her full schedule.
Am I going to get more information than that? What is that?
I mean, I feel like no one's talking about this. I don't think this is really that important of a story, but it's just, it was trending, and you're like, what is Havana syndrome?
So you do have a video here.
At the president's doorstep, 2 mysterious incidents that have intelligence officials scrambling. Multiple sources tell CNN tonight 2 White House officials were struck by a mysterious illness. One hit while they were near an entrance to the White House grounds. The other while they were passing through a gate near the Ellipse on the south side of the White House.
Hold on.
Now,
what
to be
does
clear,
that even mean?
What?
They were hit while they were walking.
You better find out.
Explain it? Okay.
To be clear, this video is from like 2 years ago. This is when Trump was in office.
Oh,
This is not current.
Okay.
But this is a really good explanation of it, and yet this just happened to our vice president, and nobody, they were all just like, Havana syndrome, and no one's talking about it.
Both were National Security Council officials, and both incidents occurred in November, sources said. The cases were consistent with a series of strange, debilitating attacks against more than 100 U.S. diplomats and intelligence personnel. One theory says they came from directed microwave signals.
There's also a psychological impact to this in terms of how this attack was launched and why this specific location was chosen. That's sending a message that we can get to you this close to the White House.
Is this the thing? Is it called the Havana? What's it called? Havana sickness? Havana sickness?
Havana syndrome.
Syndrome. Is this the thing where they were talking about, is it either in Cuba or Dominican Republic where they were playing like a tone and then all these people were getting sick? It was like this.
Where's Havana, Lee?
Cuba.
Okay. Yeah, so this is.
But is that what this is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there something called like the brown note or something?
I've
You
heard
remember
of
all
that
this
as
like
well, yeah.
super low frequency waves that would make you nauseous and stuff? I mean, this sounds like something out of sci-fi or like spy movies. I don't really know a lot about it, but I mean, they explain it a little more, I believe.
It's called Havana syndrome because the unexplained symptoms started with U.S. diplomatic officials in Cuba about 5 years ago. But similar attacks also occurred against American diplomats and intelligence officers in Russia, China, and elsewhere. Symptoms include ear popping, vertigo, pounding headaches, and nausea. Mark Polymeropoulos, a former senior CIA officer, says he was hit while in a Moscow hotel in 2017.
I woke up in the middle of the night with an incredible case of vertigo. The room was spinning. I wanted to throw up and go to the bathroom, and I'd never experienced anything like this. I had tinnitus, my ears were ringing.
That's all I got. I mean,
this is so strange. I mean, and what?
I think this hit me at my bachelor party in Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
what's the point of like you hit somebody and you give them vertigo and make them want to poop, and then they're fine the next day? I mean, like, what's the point of this? If this is a real thing, and these governments have this brown note, or they have some microwave beam they're hitting people with, and it makes them dizzy. Like, what's the point?
That's a good insight. I mean, I guess like they said in the first video is that like we're closer than you think. Like if we can hit your staff with this mysterious ailment, maybe there's more we could have done. We could have sniped you off. We should have killed you. I don't know. Is the Secret Service looking for audible weapons that are able to produce this the same way they are for like guns and knives and stuff? I don't know.
I have no idea.
Strange, but like this was like something else. You know, it's like through COVID we learned that like there might be UFOs, like UFOs are real.
And how can Vietnam have this technology and the U.S. government hasn't figured out yet what's going on? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I think they know, man. They know. And that's why they didn't let our vice president go.
If they know, then why are they allowing it to get out to the media?
Because they got to explain something like I mean, there's a lot of media that travels with the vice president, and so they probably like, we're diverting your plane or not letting you take off, and like we're going to tell you guys what's going on. And
I feel like they could literally say anything. They could be like,
we're understaffed.
She needs to attend a meeting about Afghanistan, and you'd be like, oh, okay, that sounds.
They always tell me it's weather delays.
There you go.
Are the Air Force? Is it Air Force 2? What would be the vice president's plane? The plane's just not here. It's still leaving D.C.
Somebody keeps asking about Mike Kelly's new tutorial.
We do have a promo. I don't know that we should show that because I haven't even watched it. It has to be proofed.
I want to see if I can even, like, if I'm logged in, can I see it? I guess
not there. You have to go to YouTube.
Yeah, but there's a sales page up.
Oh, okay. You were much more involved in this tutorial than I was, so you should probably talk more about it than me.
Yeah, we went out to
LA,
and we filmed really high-end houses this time. It was cool. It was really cool to see.
Just go to the YouTube channel.
But we're not logged in. Like, we're logged into the other YouTube. That's the problem.
Oh, wow. You read another super chat, and I will.
You're going to pull it up?
I think so. I'll try.
Let's see. I'm hoping this other browser might be logged into the correct. It's not. This is the worst content ever. Yeah, so anyway, we just shot like super high-end houses with Mike Kelly. I think it's not letting me log in. We shot one house that was like 35 million and one house that was 25 million bucks, and
35 million.
$35 million house, yeah. And it had these these glass windows, you know, sliding glass windows. But they were electronic. And so there were iPads in every room, and you could control the whole house, or you could just control that room. And you'd press a button and it would open up a corner of the room, you know, with just an electronic sliding glass door. But these glass doors were 12 feet tall? I don't know. And Mike told me that he met somebody that was either installing these doors or they were the builder of these doors, and each door cost over $100,000. And this house had like 7 of them. It was crazy. Every room that you would go in, half the room was glass, and you could press a button and it would just open up. So it was wild to see these houses. But I guess.
Can you cut to camera 3?
Yeah, I guess to.
There's no audio, which is probably good because this is not any kind of.
This is Mike's old work. Old work, yeah. So.
But what's the theme of this tutorial? Just how to shoot super high-end homes and like.
Yeah.
It's like his newest workflow and like what he.
Yeah, you know,
how he approaches things.
It's been a long time since we released.
This is the house.
Another. That's one of them. I think that might be the $35 million house.
Okay, just 35.
Yeah. And it's probably been 5 years since we did a tutorial with Mike. Mike's first tutorial.
Dude, that house is like all over the internet. Like
I know, it's a super famous house. And Mike, you know, he's changed the way he shoots. He changed the way he edits. He's actually a lot less hardcore with the editing and the lighting. A lot more now. He
Like
tries to get
more
right in
natural
camera.
light and
Yeah,
stuff.
natural light, a little bit easier with everything. And so he kind of just wanted to show his new workflow, and it was cool. It was fun to work on it. And like always, when we film these things, I'm always like, all right, we'll film it. It'll take a week or two to film it, and then, you know, we can edit it in a couple weeks. We'll have it done in a month. And then it's like a year later.
Because when you guys
and we're
went, I
still
don't know if
working
you
on
can
it.
tell this in this video. I mean, I'm sure you probably can. There was like wildfire. Are there still wildfires going on in LA? Like
hopefully not
half
now.
the area was on fire, and you guys had to deal with like all this crazy smoke and stuff.
Yeah, it was a really horrific time to be there. I mean, COVID was going crazy. While, like, look at the smoke you can see outside. Like, there was no views anywhere. It was just like this haze in the sky. So it was not the best
And
time.
kind of watching some of this content, looked like one of the houses wasn't even finished. He's like, you guys got to go shoot someplace where like there's no driveway, and like
Yeah.
Mike Kelly has to, maybe it's this house right here.
Yeah, that's it right
He
there.
has to like, okay, this is perfect timing. Like he's
Yeah.
about to show it, I guess. I hope he shows it. I haven't even seen this yet.
So, yeah, he had to, he
He
shot
has to,
like someone else's driveway and then morphed it in Photoshop and fixed it, which is pretty funny. But
yeah, so this, I mean, I've told people this will be out before the end of the month, but here we are at the end of the month. So
I think, I mean,
it could be out soon.
I'm supposed to proof the sales page. I was supposed to today. I never got around to it. So I'll have that proof tomorrow. And then, I mean, maybe this can go up for sale this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
This isn't a Mike Kelly show. We have another video or two, or are we done?
No, we're done.
We're done.
Oh,
Were there any more
we
super
are done.
chats?
We can go look. Let's see.
We got Elia Licardi coming tomorrow. Do you know how he's getting here, and do you know where we're going, and if we need to rent locations? I mean, Puerto Rico's small, but you can't go to the other side of the island and do a shoot and come home. It's too wide for that. Like, if we shot at sunset on the West Coast,
we're gonna stay over there.
We're gonna stay over there. So, do you have any idea of what's going on?
Hell no, I don't know what's going on. I never know what's going on with Elia.
Well, I know I'm gonna give him. Should I put a little of this paste in some of his meals?
For protection?
For protection, yeah. I'm worried,
sure,
I'm worried
just don't
about
put it in my food. Carl Hancock says, Havana syndrome symptoms aren't over in a day. They deal with symptoms for a long period of time. Look it up over Wikipedia for a good read. I will, because now I'm super interested in it. But even if they have symptoms for a long period of time, do they have symptoms for a longer period of time than if they were poisoned or shot with a gun or stabbed or what? Like, I just...
Because you remember those like Kim Jong-un deaths, or maybe it was stuff
like his brother
out of the Kremlin. There was stuff in Russia where like people were just like mysteriously like injected in the airport,
like pricked, yeah,
and then they die like a day later.
That seems a little more efficient than making somebody dizzy for a few days. But I got to look into this. Did we read all?
There's a lot of super chats here.
No, that's the last one.
Well, did we read the Mike Photog one? You read that?
Yeah, the disinformation dozen.
0.00017
Maybe I missed that one.
out of 6,000 people from 310 million doses here in the U.S. I think with 310 million doses, you have to probably divide that in half, right? Because that's not 310 million people. That'd be our whole population.
That's a good point.
So if somebody died on their second dose, you can't say there's 310 million doses. There's 150 people, 0.00017 of that number has died.
All right, are we done? Can I go to bed now?
Last time I came in here, you were sleeping.
I know. I'm a lazy, good for nothing dad.
Rid of this rosacea. What if tomorrow my face is like purple? Are you gonna try something?
No, I'm not putting
Put on
horse
top-
pills
top-
on my face.
For the right super chat, we'll put on your forehead.
All right, I'm out of here. Clear.